Unaware his wife had just closed a secret $5 billion deal, he dumped her for a new marriage and called her a failure. What she did next left him jobless and homeless. He didn't just leave his wife. He stormed into their quiet home, slammed his bag against the wall, and told her she was a useless woman with nothing to offer. Mark Carter didn't pause, didn't breathe, didn't even look at the papers that fell from her hands, pages worth billions. He walked out as if she were a burden he had finally shaken off. That night, Emily Carter stood frozen in the living room, surrounded by the scattered pages of a contract she had signed just 2 weeks earlier. A contract worth $5 billion, a contract that made her the controlling owner of the company Mark worked for. But he never asked. He never listened. He saw the quiet wife who closed her laptop when he entered the room and assumed betrayal. While he packed clothes for another woman, the glamorous consultant he had secretly married that afternoon, Emily held on to the truth. She wasn't allowed to share yet. The NDA still bound her. Her silence still protected everyone but herself. Mark thought he was trading up. He thought Vanessa was the prize. He thought Emily was the failure standing in his way. But what he never knew was this. The woman he abandoned, humiliated, and insulted was the quiet force behind a $5 billion acquisition, a deal powerful enough to shake his entire career. And when Monday arrived and the NDA finally lifted, the world knew her name before he did. This isn't just a story about a husband who left. It's about what happens when the person you underestimate turns out to be the one holding the crown. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's voice get buried again. Please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The sound hit first, sharp, urgent, almost like a warning. A heavy metal door slammed shut behind Emily Carter, age 31, as she stepped into the dim hallway of the cybersecurity lab. The echo thundered through the empty building, bouncing off glass walls and steel desks, vibrating with an intensity that matched the storm inside her chest. Her breath was fast, uneven. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she had just done. She had signed a $5 billion acquisition contract. She had changed the course of her life in a single night, and her husband had no idea. From the outside, Emily seemed like a quiet, gentle woman, soft-spoken, reserved, someone easy to underestimate. But beneath that calm surface lived a mind sharper than the servers humming around her. At 27, she became one of the youngest systems architects in a federal-grade cybersecurity company. At 29, she co-founded a secret cybersecurity startup with 2 female engineers, Sarah and Lila. At 31, she stood in a locked lab, watching the ink dry on a contract that would change everything. Their startup had just been acquired, not in cash alone, but in equity. The deal was structured so that, in exchange for their technology and patents, Emily would receive a controlling stake in the company buying them, Carter Systems, a large cybersecurity firm, the same company where her husband, Mark Carter, worked as a sales manager. He knew nothing. He had walked past the Carter Systems logo for years, never knowing his wife was quietly becoming the majority owner behind the scenes. But Emily never bragged, never showed off, never even defended her own brilliance, because she knew what happened when she did. Emily, at 23, sitting at a kitchen table with a boyfriend who claimed to love her. She built him a full inventory system for his small business. He took the credit. She got nothing, not even a thank you. Emily, at 25, dating a man who begged her to help out with his app idea. She wrote the structure. He presented it as his to investors. Emily, at 26, crying alone in a tiny apartment after yet another boyfriend used her intelligence. Then walked away as soon as he got what he wanted. 3 times she was exploited. 3 times her work was stolen. 3 times she learned the same lesson. Not everyone wants you to succeed. By the time she turned 28, she made herself a promise. Build quietly. Protect your ideas. Never reveal too much until it's safe. That promise shaped everything. That promise also led her straight into Mark Carter, then 32, a charming sales manager with a smile that seemed to erase every bad memory. The way he looked at Emily made her believe she had finally found someone who didn't want to use her. He held doors for her. He made her laugh. He told her, "You don't have to be the best. Just let me take care of things." For a woman who had spent years fighting alone, Those words felt like healing. They married within a year. And that, she later realized, was where the real danger began. Mark loved confidence, loud success, people who bragged about achievements. He loved attention. He loved being praised. Emily loved none of those things. She preferred quiet. She preferred letting her work speak for itself. She preferred not to reveal her scars or her genius. So when her startup began working with government-level cybersecurity contracts, she signed strict NDAs without hesitation. The rules were simple. Say nothing, show nothing, reveal nothing beyond what legal allowed. One careless sentence could collapse billions in negotiations and destroy Sarah's and Lila's futures. Emily would never risk that. But her silence had consequences. Every time Mark walked into their shared home office, she would quickly close her laptop, not because she was hiding something wrong, but because she was protecting a deal that involved federal security, patent transfers, and now a multi-billion-dollar equity swap. Mark misread it every single time. He thought she was secretive. She thought she was shielding him. Neither understood the other, and neither realized this tiny misunderstanding was quietly preparing to destroy their marriage. Now, standing in the cold hallway with the $5 billion contract in her hand, Emily finally allowed her heartbeat to settle. For the first time in years, she let herself imagine telling Mark everything. The truth, the deal, the success. The fact that when this contract closed, she would own the company that paid his salary. Maybe he would be proud. Maybe he would finally see the woman she really was. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mark. Short, cold, nothing like the man she married. "We need to talk when you get home." Her stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Something deeper than her NDA, deeper than her quiet personality, deeper than any misunderstanding. A fear she couldn't explain crawled up her spine. The hallway lights flickered. Her phone buzzed again, this time from her co-founder, Sarah. "Emily, keep everything silent. Do not tell anyone yet. Our legal team wants total radio silence till Monday." Emily stared at the message, confused. Why tonight? Why the double warning from Mark and from Sarah on the same evening? A soft click echoed through the building. She froze. Someone else was in the hallway. She looked up and saw a shadow, a man-shaped silhouette, standing at the far end of the corridor, watching her. Watching her, her pulse hammered. Then the silhouette moved closer, stepped under the light. The night security guard. He nodded politely, did his usual check, and walked past her toward the stairwell. Emily exhaled, but the chill in her chest didn't leave, because deep inside she knew. The real danger wasn't in this hallway. It was waiting at home, and her marriage was already cracking in ways she hadn't seen yet. The argument hit the house like a slammed door, loud, sudden, and completely unexpected. 3 nights had passed since Emily signed the acquisition contract. She had barely slept, moving between meetings, lawyers, and secure calls. That evening, after completing phase 2 of the $5 billion deal, she walked into the kitchen hoping for a quiet dinner. Instead, she walked into a storm. Mark Carter, age 34, stood by the counter with his voice raised, the tension sharp enough to cut the air. He didn't shout often, but lately something inside him had been snapping more and more. "You didn't even hear what I said, Emily. You never listen anymore." Emily, still wearing her office badge from the lab, froze beside the refrigerator. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the emotional fatigue of carrying a secret so massive it weighed on her like an iron chain. She had just secured final approval for government integration. Phase 2 of the deal was locked in. The legal team had reminded her again that revealing anything, even to family before Monday, could void the contract. But she couldn't tell him that. Not yet. Not without risking everything. The intensity slowly faded as silence crept between them. Mark, breathing hard, rubbed the back of his neck. Emily quietly placed her bag down, her voice soft. "Sorry, I had a long day. Tell me again. What happened at work?" He sighed dramatically, as if he were forced to explain something obvious. "Vanessa got promoted, again." He said the name like it should mean something to Emily. Emily straightened. This wasn't the first time she had heard the name Vanessa, but it was the first time she heard it wrapped in that mix of irritation and envy. Vanessa? Emily repeated carefully. The consultant you mentioned last month? The consultant who actually wants to grow here, he snapped. She speaks up. She fights for her ideas. She doesn't hide everything she does. The words hit deeper than he intended, but he didn't notice. He never noticed. Emily forced a gentle smile, her usual armor. I'm happy for her, she said quietly. But inside her thoughts churned. Emily knew why Mark was frustrated. His career had plateaued 2 years ago. He worked hard, but he wanted more recognition, more progress, more opportunities. Vanessa Hale, early 30s, had been brought in as a performance consultant months ago. She was now becoming the example of ambition in his eyes. Someone who earned results. Someone loud enough about her work to be rewarded. Emily wasn't loud. Emily couldn't be loud. Not with the NDA wrapped so tightly around her entire life. When the startup first signed with government clients, she and Sarah had gone through every clause. They had agreed on one thing. They would treat the NDA like sacred law. Emily had even told Mark months ago, I'm working on something sensitive. I'll be vague for a while, okay? I just need you to trust me. He'd shrugged, half listening, scrolling his phone. Now that half listening had turned into deep suspicion. Mark leaned against the counter, arms folded across his chest. I mean, when people want something, they go for it, he said. They don't sit quietly in the dark, hiding whatever they're doing. Emily's heart tightened. She didn't miss the implication. She set plates on the table, focusing on her breathing, keeping her face calm. She loved Mark. She wanted him to succeed. She wasn't competing with him. She was building something in silence that would benefit both of them once the time was right. He didn't know that. He couldn't know that. He also never asked. Over dinner, Mark barely touched his food. He talked about the office, about pressure, about promotions he hadn't received. Emily listened, really listened, offering soft encouragements he barely heard. At one point he said, You know, people who really want success show it. They don't hide their work like it's some secret life. Emily looked up, her fork paused midair. She swallowed the sting and simply said, I'm trying, Mark. I really am. But the truth was she couldn't show it yet, not without risking the livelihoods of her co-founders and the entire deal. This misunderstanding, quiet versus loud, compliance versus openness, became the first real crack between them. He saw secrecy. She saw responsibility. He wanted visibility. She needed silence. Two people living in the same home, drifting apart quietly. After dinner, Emily sat on the couch scrolling through secure messages. Her body felt heavy from the day's success mixed with Mark's disappointment. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. We're close. Keep everything quiet. Investor wants 0 leaks before Monday. Emily smiled softly. Close meant the deal was entering its final stage. The biggest stage. The stage that would change their lives forever. Before she could lock her screen, Mark walked into the room. He wasn't loud this time. He didn't accuse. He didn't ask. He simply looked down at the notification. We're close. Keep everything quiet. And the look in his eyes shifted into something dark. Suspicion, hurt, assumption. He stared at the screen, then at Emily. His jaw flexed. Who is that? He asked quietly. Sarah, Emily began. My co-founder. We're just... But Mark had already turned away before she could finish. His steps were heavy as he walked back toward the hallway. Something in his silence scared her far more than his shouting had. From the bedroom, she heard him pick up his phone. She couldn't hear the full conversation, but she recognized the name he said, Vanessa. Can we talk? And this time, he didn't sound like a man asking for advice. He sounded like a man looking for a replacement. The office door burst open with a force that made several employees jump. The morning after that tense dinner, Mark Carter stormed inside, breathing hard, frustration burning through every step. He slammed a stack of files on his desk so loudly that pens rolled across the table. His co-workers exchanged uneasy glances. Mark wasn't usually aggressive, but something in him had been unraveling for weeks, and today it finally snapped. He stared at his computer screen, but didn't see a single word. All he saw was Emily's phone. We're close. Keep everything quiet. Replaying in his mind, smashed together with months of closed laptops, whispered calls, and I can't talk about it yet. He pushed away from his desk so hard the chair toppled over. That's when the door opened again. A woman stepped inside, calm and composed. She was in her early 30s, tall, confident, dressed in a bright blazer that demanded attention. Her name was Vanessa Hale, a consultant who had been assigned to Mark's department 6 months earlier to help streamline performance. Everyone knew what that meant. She was there to evaluate them. She had also become the person Mark called the night before. Vanessa noticed the tipped chair, the scattered papers, the tension radiating off Mark like heat. "Rough morning?" she asked, her voice smooth, sugar-coated, trained to soothe and disarm. Mark didn't answer. He didn't trust himself to. Vanessa closed the door behind her. She walked closer, studying him with sharp eyes. Vanessa wasn't just confident, she was strategic. She could read people within seconds, find their insecurities, and step right into them. And Mark? His insecurity screamed. His ego was bruised. His fear of being unappreciated showed in every tense movement. Vanessa smiled inside. That was her favorite type of man. She rested against his desk, pretending to glance at his files, but really she watched his face. "What happened?" she asked gently. "You look like someone just punched the air out of you." Mark swallowed hard. He thought of Emily shutting laptops, whispering on calls, asking him to trust her without giving details. He whispered, "Nothing. Just stress." Vanessa tilted her head. "Stress doesn't look like this," she said. "Stress looks tired. You look hurt." Mark froze. She had named the thing he refused to say out loud. Vanessa stepped closer, her tone turning softer. "Sometimes the people closest to us don't understand us," she said. "They don't support us. They don't push us to be better." Mark looked up slowly. Her words slid right into the cracks Emily's silence had left. "Your wife," Vanessa continued casually, "does she appreciate you?" Mark hesitated. He could have said yes. He could have remembered the nights Emily stayed up listening to him rant about the office. He could have remembered her buying him suits before big presentations, but all he felt now was her secrecy. His silence was enough for Vanessa. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You deserve someone who matches your ambition, Mark. Someone who actually sees you." The words hit him exactly where she intended, the vulnerable part of him he never admitted existed. 7-year-old Mark sat at a dinner table with his father, a hard man with sharper opinions. His father said, "Never marry a woman who outgrows you. Men lead, women follow. If she gets ahead, you lose respect." Young Mark nodded, not fully understanding, but absorbing every word. Those seeds stayed inside him for decades. He grew into a man who liked being praised, who liked being the successful one, who felt uneasy when a woman was too powerful. When Emily seemed small and grateful, he felt safe. Now watching her quietly succeed, quietly grow, quietly evolve, triggered every insecurity he never healed. Back in the present, Vanessa noticed all of it. She leaned against his desk, crossing her arms in a way that looked casual but wasn't. "You work hard, Mark," she said. "You deserve more than being ignored." Mark didn't argue. He didn't defend Emily. He didn't say, "She's under a legal contract. She's not ignoring me." He just let the silence answer for him. Vanessa smiled faintly. "Well," she said, straightening her blazer, "I'm here to help you shine. You're capable of more than you think. And I'm the kind of woman who actually sees potential." Mark's shoulders relaxed for the first time all day. Her attention felt good. Too good. She reached for the photo frame on his desk, the one with Emily holding his arm during happier times. Vanessa studied the picture, then let out a soft, mocking chuckle. "Wow," she said. "She looks basic." The words sliced through the room. Mark didn't react. He didn't defend Emily. He didn't say a single word. And Vanessa noticed that silence, which told her everything she needed to know. She gently placed the photo back, smirking. "Call me if you ever need someone to talk to," she said, handing him her card, "or if you just want someone who listens." She walked out, letting her perfume linger like a trap. Mark stared at the card for a long time. Too long. That night, while Emily stepped out of their living room to answer a secure business message, Mark quietly slid Vanessa's card into his wallet. right beside the credit card he would later max out. For a life that didn't include Emily. Emily would soon see something that would shatter the last piece of trust she had left. The shouting hit before the door even closed. Emily Carter stepped into the house with her bag still on her shoulder, heart racing from excitement. The legal team had confirmed it that afternoon. All signatures were in. The $5 billion acquisition was fully executed. On paper, she now held controlling interest in Carter Systems, Mark's company. She was days away from being allowed to say it out loud. But before she could even take off her shoes, Mark's voice cut through the living room like a blade. "Where were you?" His tone wasn't curious. It was sharp, cold, accusing. Emily froze halfway across the doorway. She blinked at him, confused by the icy stare he aimed at her. His eyes weren't the warm, playful eyes she fell in love with. They were narrowed, suspicious. She swallowed. "Mark, I just got home from work. The lab ran over. We had work," he repeated, mocking her word. "Is that what you call all these secret meetings?" Emily's heart sank. She walked into the kitchen slowly, like stepping into a room full of broken glass. Mark's laptop was open on the counter. A page of her private calendar sat on the screen. Investor call, secure, founder briefing confidential meeting. So off-site. He had gone through her calendar. She suddenly remembered they had linked their calendars a year earlier so they wouldn't double book doctor visits and birthdays. She never imagined he'd weaponize that access. "Mark, why were you in my calendar?" she asked gently. Mark laughed once, bitter. "Because you don't tell me anything. Because every time I walk into the room, you shut your laptop. Because you whisper on calls. Because you've been hiding something for years." His voice cracked slightly, revealing something beneath the anger. Hurt, insecurity, fear of being left behind. Emily stepped closer. "I've been working on something important, but I can't talk about it yet. I told you months ago I signed a strict NDA. I could lose everything if I say the wrong thing before." "So you are hiding something," he snapped. "No," she whispered. "I'm protecting it. I'm protecting us." But she couldn't say the words. $5 billion acquisition, government contracts, controlling stake in his company. She could only hope he trusted her enough to wait until Monday. He didn't. Before she could continue, his phone buzzed on the counter. A new message flashed across the screen from Vanessa Hale. He didn't hide the message. He didn't close the phone. He didn't even move it away. Did she lie again? A marriage without honesty is already over. Emily felt her stomach twist. Mark didn't deny anything. He didn't say, "You don't understand." He didn't silence the message. He just watched Emily stand there with tears building at the corners of her eyes. She tried again. Her voice shook. "There's something important I need to share soon. Legally, I have to wait till—" "So you can't tell me now?" He cut in. "It's not time yet," she answered honestly. To her, that meant the contract isn't fully cleared for public disclosure. To him, it meant only one thing. "You're lying." He stepped back like she was some stranger who had invaded his home. "Don't bother," he said. "I already know what's going on." Emily's voice cracked. "You don't." But Mark wasn't listening, because Vanessa had already planted the poison. "She's been lying to me," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "She's draining me, and I was too stupid to see it." Emily frowned. "Draining you? What does that mean?" Mark didn't answer. He opened his banking app and held it toward her, hands shaking with fury. There on the screen were small transfers from their joint account, amounts of $40, $60, $100, moving into Emily's registered business account. Transfers she had set up through their accountant months ago, when they both agreed she'd invest a portion of their savings into her consulting work. Transfers she had mentioned casually, that he'd waved off at the time, tiny amounts compared to their income, but they looked suspicious out of context. "You're using my money," Mark muttered. "You're funding your secret life with my account." "Mark, you signed off on this with our accountant," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's for servers, legal fees, secure tools. I told you I was building something." He pulled the phone back. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what the transfers actually paid for. He didn't ask about her startup, or the contracts, or her reasoning. He had already decided. He stepped away, his voice dropping into something dark. This marriage is starting to look like a joke. And then he grabbed his jacket. He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his phone. He walked out without looking back. As the door slammed behind him, Emily's phone buzzed. A single message popped up from her lawyer, Andrew Blake. Emily, the NDA lifts next Monday, and I just saw something in the public records. We need to talk. Call me immediately. Her heart pounded. Public records? About what? She didn't know it yet, but Mark hadn't just walked out to cool off. He was walking out to rewrite his life with someone else. The moment the front door exploded open, Emily Carter knew something terrible was coming. It had been 3 days since Mark stormed out. He hadn't come home. He hadn't answered her messages. Andrew, her lawyer, had told her to stay calm until he confirmed what he'd seen in the records. Now Mark stood in the doorway with a wild, violent energy, dragging a half-zipped bag behind him. His face was red with rage. "Where are you?" he shouted. Emily stepped out of the hallway, holding the thick NDA binder, the one worth billions. Her hands trembled, not from guilt, but from the secret she was finally just days away from revealing. "Mark, what's wrong? Where have you been?" she asked, voice small but steady. He marched toward her, eyes burning. "What's wrong?" he mocked. "What's wrong? Emily, I'm done." He grabbed the binder from her hands and threw it onto the floor. Papers, signed deal pages worth $5 billion, flew across the carpet like worthless trash. "You're a failure," he spat. "You're a liar. You contribute nothing." His words cracked the air like thunder. Emily's knees weakened. "Mark, please, let me explain. The NDA lifts on Monday, and then I can finally—" "NDA?" He laughed harshly, stepping closer. "Is that your excuse? More secrets? More half-answers?" She tried again, tears burning her eyes. "I swear, Monday I can finally tell you everything. The company, the deal, why I've been so—" He cut her off. "There is no Monday," he snarled. "I'm done with you." Emily felt the room tilt. "What do you mean?" "Mark, what are you saying?" He zipped his bag with shaking hands. "I'm leaving. Tonight. For good." Her voice broke. "Mark, no. We can go to counseling. We can talk through this. You don't even know what I've—" He raised a hand to silence her. "I already fixed my life," he said proudly. "I fixed everything you ruined." Emily stared at him in confusion and fear. Then came the sentence that shattered her. "I got married today." Silence. Cold. Heavy. Unbelievable. Emily's heart stopped. "You? What?" she whispered. Mark lifted his left hand. A brand new silver ring glinted under the living room light. "Married," he repeated, "to someone better, someone supportive, someone who believes in me." Her breath hitched. "Vanessa," he said with a smug smile, "we had a courthouse ceremony this afternoon." Emily stared, stunned. A courthouse ceremony. While still legally married to her. Andrew's warning about public records suddenly made sense. Reflection flooded in like ice water. Images flashed in her mind. Mark leaving angrily 3 days ago. Vanessa's messages on his phone. His growing bitterness over her secrets. The lawyer's message about different consequences now that he's remarried. The thick contract on the floor, the one that made her the controlling owner of his company. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't confusion. This had been planned. He had not just emotionally left her, he had replaced her on paper. Mark threw a folder onto the couch. Inside, Emily saw a stack of printed emails, hotel receipts, and a thin packet labeled Civil Marriage, Helen Carter. A wedding certificate sat on top, signed and stamped. "We're starting a life together," Mark said, lifting his chin. "A real life, not the boring life you trapped me in." Emily tried to speak, but her voice barely came out. "You never even asked what I was doing," she whispered. "You never asked why I was working late. You never once asked what I was building for us." He scoffed. "You? Working? Please. Vanessa actually does things. She tells me everything. She supports me. She believes in my dreams." Emily shook her head slowly, the betrayal slicing deeper with every breath. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Never shrink for a man. But she had. She had shrunk for years. Mark reached for the doorknob. "I'm moving in with her tonight," he said. Don't call me, don't text me, it's over. He opened the door and stepped out. Then he turned back one last time and delivered the final blow. Thank you for nothing. The door slammed shut so hard the wall shook. For a moment, Emily couldn't move. She was surrounded by scattered pages of $1 billion deal, an open folder proving his new marriage, and the echo of his words. Thank you for nothing. Slowly, she dropped to her knees. Her hand landed on the edge of the courthouse certificate. She stared at his signature, then at the date. Today. He had stood before a judge, declared himself single enough to remarry, while still legally bound to her. A slow fire lit behind her eyes. Emily stood up, wiped her tears, picked up the marriage folder and the signed certificate. A new clarity formed, sharp, cold, unbreakable. In that moment, Emily Carter was reborn. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Andrew. Emily, I've confirmed it. He registered a second marriage while still married to you. Now that he has remarried, the legal consequences will be very different. Call me. We can use this. She looked from the message to the scattered $5 billion contract to the folder with Hale and Carter stamped across it. For the first time since this began, she wasn't just hurt. She was done being quiet. And Mark Carter had no idea that the woman he called nothing now held the power to take everything. The sound that tore out of Emily's chest didn't even feel human. It came right after the door slammed. Mark's words still bounced around the house like broken glass. I got married today. Vanessa. Thank you for nothing. The folder he'd thrown, Civil Marriage, Hale and Carter, still lay on the couch. The $5 billion contract pages were scattered across the floor like trash. Emily's hands shook. She reached for the folder, but her fingers slipped. It fell from her grip and hit the carpet with a heavy thud. Papers spilled out. Court stamps, signatures, dated forms, a receipt from the courthouse, a bland official page that declared, Marriage License and Certificate, Mark Carter and Vanessa Hale. Her knees hit the floor so hard she barely felt it. Her entire marriage, every promise, every compromise, wasn't just broken. It had been replaced. Not a weak moment, not a one-time mistake, a deliberate decision. Her breathing was sharp and uneven at first. Then slowly, it changed. The intensity in her chest softened into something else. Not peace, clarity. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She didn't chase after him. She went still, completely still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a storm forms. Her eyes burned, but the tears didn't fall anymore. They sat there, heavy, waiting, as a strange calm washed over her. Not numb, not empty, just done. As she stared at the marriage folder, old memories rose like ghosts. Emily, age 22, watching a boyfriend plug her code into his project and tell his friends, "Yeah, I finally figured this part out." She sat there quietly, giving him the win. Emily, age 25, being told by a partner, "Relax, you're smart, but you're not leadership material. Let me talk to investors." She stepped back, even though she had written every line. Emily, age 26, holding a rejection email for a senior position she was qualified for. Her then boyfriend had convinced her not to apply. "You're not ready," he said. 2 weeks later, he applied for the same role. Every time she shrank. Every time she stayed quiet. Every time she handed away the light she had earned. She thought Mark was different, but now with his second marriage certificate on the floor of the home they shared, she realized the truth. She hadn't married a different kind of man. She had married the final version of the same pattern. This time, though, there was one difference. She was not powerless. Her breathing deepened. No shaking, no panic, no begging. Just a steady rise of something harder, stronger. Decision. Emily reached for her phone with steady fingers. She dialed the one person who knew every legal detail of her life. Her lawyer, Andrew Blake, age 45. Sharp, loyal, and brutally honest. He answered on the second ring. "Emily, I was just about to call you. I checked the records. He actually—" She cut him off. Her voice was soft, but there was steel in it. "Andrew, prepare everything." There was a pause on the line. "What do you mean, everything?" he asked carefully. Emily looked around the room. The throne contract, the open folder, the second marriage. Divorce, she said. Asset review. Evidence filing. And bring in the acquisition documents. The line went quiet. Andrew knew Emily well enough to hear the shift in her tone. This wasn't a crying woman. This was a calculating one. He cleared his throat. Emily, before I start drafting, I need to confirm something, he said. She waited. Do you understand what you own now, after the acquisition finalized? Emily rose slowly from the floor, gathering pages of the $5 billion contract into her arms. She found the section with her equity line and the name Carter Systems highlighted. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a power she had never used before. Yes, Andrew, she said. I understand. She held the contract like armor. And he will too. No tremor, no hesitation, no begging. This was not the sound of a broken woman. This was the sound of a woman who realized she had been powerful the entire time, and now decided to use it. Andrew exhaled softly. I'll prepare everything, he said. And Emily, whatever happens next, be ready. This won't just hit him emotionally, it'll hit him legally. She hung up without another word. Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. A message from her startup's lead investor. Emily, congratulations. With the acquisition completed, you now hold controlling interest in Carter Systems. Carter Systems. Mark's company. The place he walked into every day thinking he was climbing to the top. Emily's eyes lifted slowly. The storm had officially begun. The cameras flashed so fast the lights felt like lightning. Emily Carter stepped onto the stage of the acquisition event, and the crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, reporters calling her name. The giant screen behind her displayed the headline, Carter Systems acquired an historic $5 billion deal. Lead architect and the controlling owner, Emily Carter. This should have been the proudest day of her life. Instead, the noise around her fought with a different sound in her head. You're a failure. You contribute nothing. Thank you for nothing. The intensity of the celebration clashed brutally with the memory of Mark packing a bag for another woman. She kept her expression calm, her posture steady, her smile small but professional. Inside, a storm pushed against her ribs. A man stepped beside her on stage. Mr. Reed, Sarah's father, and one of their earliest investors. Late 50s, sharp eyes, quiet presence. He leaned toward her and whispered, Emily, you didn't just close a deal. You changed an entire industry. Be proud of that. Emily nodded politely, but her thoughts weren't staying in this room. They were with the man who had thrown away their marriage in exchange for quick validation. As the applause rolled, Emily realized something important. She wasn't standing here because Mark doubted her. She was standing here in spite of it. After the event, Emily walked through the crowded lobby with cameras still trailing her. She smiled for a few photos, shook a few hands, accepted congratulations. But she didn't stay to celebrate. Her mind had already moved to the next step. Andrew was waiting for her in a quiet office down the hall, away from the noise, away from the cameras, away from the spotlight. He stood when she walked in. Congratulations, he said, closing the door behind her. You handled that perfectly. On the table sat a thick folder, not the acquisition one, another one. He slid it across to her. Before we decide on next steps, he said carefully, you need to see everything we've gathered. Emily sat down and opened the folder. The first section showed Mark's hidden debts, credit cards he opened without telling her, personal loans, balances rolled over for months. The second section showed how he had been making payments, joint account withdrawals, questionable transfers, late fees. He had been patching holes in his life using money they had saved together, without ever admitting it. The next section showed screenshots of messages between Mark and Vanessa, pulled through legal investigation of his work devices. Use her credit, she's too distracted. Move the money quickly before she notices. She's hiding things anyway, don't feel bad. Emily's stomach twisted, but she kept reading. Another section, Mark's text to friends. She thinks she's smart, but she's clueless. She brings nothing to the table. Vanessa gets me, Emily doesn't. Emily felt a sting behind her eyes, but no tears came. She had already cried all she was ever going to cry for him. Andrew turned to the final part of the folder, the one that connected everything, the financial documents from the acquisition. Highlighted lines, Post-merger ownership distribution. Emily Carter, 62% controlling interest in Carter Systems. Andrew closed the folder. Emily, he said quietly, you now legally hold more power over Mark's career than he ever had over yours. Every promotion he wanted, every client he depended on, every future paycheck, directly or indirectly, comes under your control. She looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, not vengeful, just clear. Then let's continue, she said. Andrew studied her for a moment, then leaned back. One question first, he said. This decides how we move. He clasped his hands together. Do you want to remove Mark quietly? He paused. Or publicly? The room went still. Emily glanced down at the folder, full of debts, betrayal, mockery, and proof that he had tried to build a new life on top of her name and resources. She closed it gently. When she looked back at Andrew, there was no softness left in her decision. Publicly, she said. Andrew nodded once. He pulled out a second, thinner folder labeled Carter Systems Internal Disciplinary Hearing. He pushed it toward her. Then you'll need to be at Carter Systems headquarters tomorrow morning, he said. Emily placed her hand on the folder. Tomorrow, Mark would learn the truth, and he would learn it in front of everyone he tried to impress. The elevator doors opened with a sharp metallic ding, and Mark Carter stepped out like he still owned the floor. He straightened his suit jacket, smoothed his hair, and walked through the hallway with the same swagger he'd used for years. Vanessa had stayed silent the last day, but he kept replaying her old words. You deserve more. You're meant to lead, not follow. They'll regret underestimating you. Even after being distant, she had fed his ego long enough that it still carried him. Or so he thought. But the moment he walked into the main area of Carter Systems, something felt off. People weren't smiling. People weren't greeting him. People weren't making small jokes about targets or clients. They were whispering. Some moved out of his way quickly. Some watched him with pity. Some stared at their screens, pretending not to see him at all. A few eyes flicked toward the glass-walled conference room at the center of the floor. Mark frowned. What's with everyone? He muttered, tightening his grip on his briefcase. He turned the corner toward the conference room and froze. The executives were all there. Senior managers, HR, legal, the CEO. Every seat filled, every face turned toward the front of the room, and standing there, Emily, his wife, his ex in his mind. The woman he had called nothing. She wore a simple, sharp blazer, minimal jewelry, no dramatic makeup, just quiet, clean confidence. She looked nothing like the woman he used to dismiss at their kitchen table. She looked like she belonged at the head of the room. Mark's shock turned instantly into anger. What the hell are you doing here? He snapped, stepping into the doorway. This is a company meeting. You look pathetic, Emily. Go home. Silence dropped like a curtain. No one laughed. No one backed him up. No one even shifted in their chairs. Emily didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't move. Mark let out an awkward laugh and glanced around. Seriously, why is she here? He demanded. This some kind of joke? Before he could get closer, a man rose from a seat near the front. Andrew Blake, Emily's lawyer. Mr. Carter, Andrew said calmly, please take a seat. Mark scoffed. I'm not sitting. This is ridiculous. I work here. She doesn't. Andrew opened the folder in front of him and began placing documents on the table. Today's meeting concerns your conduct, he said, and your continued employment. Mark's stomach flipped. What? He said. Andrew slid the first set of pages forward. Your misuse of company resources, he said. Excessive, unapproved client entertainment expenses. Personal trips filed as business. All documented. He slid another set. Debt transfers from the joint account you shared with Mrs. Carter, used to cover your private debts while presenting yourself as financially stable to this company. Mark reached for the papers with shaking hands. This is taken out of context, he said. You can't just, Andrew continued over him. Your collaboration with an external consultant, Vanessa Hale, to manipulate client pitches and bypass internal protocols. Gasps rippled around the room. Several executives glanced at each other. HR's face tightened. And finally, Andrew said, sliding the last set of documents forward, your disclosure of confidential company data to an unauthorized outside party, violating policy, violating trust. Vanessa. Mark's breathing quickened. This is insane, he said. Emily, tell them this isn't what it looks like. Tell them you're doing this out of spite. He turned to her, desperate now. Emily finally met his eyes. She didn't look angry. She didn't look vengeful. She just looked done. The CEO, Mr. Dalton, cleared his throat and stepped away from his usual place at the head of the table. This meeting is no longer under my full authority, he said. There's been a change in ownership. Mark blinked. Ownership? He repeated. What ownership? Andrew closed the folder. As of last week's acquisition, he said clearly, Mrs. Emily Carter owns 62% of Carter Systems. The room went dead silent. The words hung in the air. She owns the company. Mark felt the ground drop out from under him. He stared at Emily. You own this company? He whispered. You? Emily held his gaze. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply confirmed with her silence what the documents already proved. Two security officers stepped inside the conference room. Calm, professional. Mr. Carter, one said, we need your company badge, laptop, and access card. Mark stumbled backward. Wait, no, Emily, please, don't do this, he begged. We can fix this. We can talk. Don't ruin me. She said nothing, because she wasn't the one ruining him. He had done that himself. Security took his badge, his laptop, his access card. They guided him out of the conference room, past rows of silent employees. No one stopped them. Not a single coworker stepped forward. He searched for Vanessa, but she was nowhere near him. He was alone. From near the back of the room, half hidden by the doorway, Vanessa Hale stood still. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled. As security escorted Mark past her, she whispered under her breath, voice barely audible, if he's finished, then I'm next. And she was right, because Emily had not just taken his job. She had pulled the thread that would unravel everything he built on lies. The knock on the motel door sounded like an explosion. Mark jolted awake, his heart pounding. The thin blanket slipped off his shoulders, and for a second he forgot where he was. Then the smell of stale carpet and cheap detergent reminded him. He wasn't at home. He wasn't in a condo with Vanessa. He wasn't in any version of the life he had bragged about. He was in a roadside motel he paid for, with the last working card in his wallet. He stumbled to the door and opened it, expecting maybe a staff member, maybe Vanessa, finally ready to forgive him. Instead, two repo agents stood outside, flashlights, clipboards, tired expressions. Mark Carter? One asked. Yeah, Mark said, rubbing his face. What is this? I already paid for tonight. We're not here about the room, the agent said. He pointed toward the parking lot. We're here for the car. Mark's stomach dropped. What? No, you can't. I need that car. He pushed past them, barefoot, stumbling onto the cracked asphalt. Under the dim motel lights, he saw it. His car, half lifted onto a tow truck. The same car he'd driven to impress clients, to pick up Vanessa, to speed away from the house he once shared with Emily. The driver checked his watch. Loan default, he said. Payments overdue. Employer authorization to reclaim the company car. It's all here. Employer. Carter Systems still technically owned the vehicle. As majority owner, Emily had signed off on reclaiming all company assets in his possession. Mark snatched the paper from the driver. There it was. Company letterhead, legal language, and electronic approval with her name on it. Emily Carter. No, she wouldn't do this, he whispered. She knows I need that car. I can pay. I'll fix it. Just give me time. The driver shook his head. Sir, this isn't personal. The paperwork's done. The truck roared to life and rolled away, taking the last symbol of his old life with it. Mark's legs gave out. He sank to his knees on the cold pavement, the motel lights making his shadow look small and broken. His life had collapsed so fast there was no time to pretend it was bad luck. This was consequence. He thought back in pieces. 48 hours earlier, after security escorted him out of Carter Systems, Mark had gone straight to Vanessa's condo. He banged on her door like a man begging for air. She opened it just enough to look at him. No mascara, no confident smile, just fear. "Mark, you dragged me into this," she whispered. "You told me they'd never find out. You used client data. You made me comment on pitches that weren't officially approved. I could lose my license, my contracts, everything." "Vanessa, please, I lost my job," he said. "I left Emily for you. I have no one else." Her jaw clenched. "You didn't leave her for me. You left her for your ego," she said. "I'm not going down with you." She closed the door. His next call went straight to voicemail. 24 hours earlier, he went to the bank to withdraw what little money he felt certain was still his. The banker pulled up his account and frowned. "Sir, your accounts are under temporary freeze," she said. "There's an ongoing fraud and debt investigation connected to your financial activity." Mark laughed once in disbelief. "What fraud?" he demanded. She turned the monitor slightly so he could see. He saw his name next to large transfers between his personal cards, joint account withdrawals that funded private debt, screenshots attached from Emily's legal team of messages telling him to move money quickly and use her credit. Messages from Vanessa. The bank wasn't attacking him. They were responding to what he had done. By the time he stumbled out of the branch, he knew no savings, no line of credit, no backup funds. 12 hours earlier, he attended an emergency divorce hearing Andrew had pushed to schedule quickly based on bigamy and fraud evidence. He arrived thinking he could fight back. He left with nothing. Judge Morris reviewed everything: marriage records showing his second marriage attempt, bank records, employment misconduct, proof of hidden debts. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "your actions, financially and personally, demonstrate a pattern of deception. You are responsible for all debts created in your name. Mrs. Carter retains all business-related assets and is absolved of liability." Mark felt the words hit harder than any punch. He tried to look at Emily. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. She just sat there calm as the judge confirmed what she already knew. He had destroyed himself. Now on the cold pavement outside a motel, staring at the empty parking space where his car used to be, Mark could no longer pretend any of this was a misunderstanding. It wasn't Emily's revenge doing this. It was his own choices finally arriving. By nightfall, the motel manager knocked again. No payment, no room. Mark walked with a torn duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the weight of it digging into his skin. Rejection emails buzzed his phone. "Position filled. Not a fit at this time. Due to ethics concerns and your recent termination, we cannot proceed." Emily hadn't called those companies. He had done enough damage publicly that anyone searching his name saw the mess. By the time he collapsed behind a gas station, back against a brick wall, his body ached from exhaustion. His suit was stained and wrinkled, his hair tangled, his stomach empty. He tilted his head and looked through the convenience store window. A magazine sat on a stand near the cash register. The headline, "The Quiet Architect Behind a $5 billion Empire. Exclusive, How Emily Carter Became the New Power in Cybersecurity." Her picture, gentle eyes, calm smile, quiet strength, looked back at him. The same woman he had called a failure. His eyes filled. It wasn't her success that finally broke him. It was the realization that she had built all of that while still loving him, hoping to share it with him. And he had walked away as if she were nothing. He pressed his forehead against the bricks and cried in a way he never had before. Not for what he'd lost, but for who he'd become. Head down, vision blurry, he didn't notice the black car pulling up, but he heard the door close. He looked up. A familiar figure stepped out, heels clicking softly on the pavement, silhouette clear under the streetlights. Emily. She had found him. Mark saw her before she spoke. Emily Carter stepped out of the black car with the quiet grace of someone who had walked through fire and come out whole. She wore a simple, elegant dress, her hair pulled back neatly. No flashy jewelry, no loud colors. Just calm, just control. She had just left a nearby charity gala where she was the keynote guest, invited as the woman who redefined cybersecurity leadership. Now she stood in front of the man who once told her she was nothing. The intensity burst inside him like a dam. "Emily," he called out. His voice cracked so hard, two people filling their gas tanks turned to look. He stumbled toward her, shoes scuffing the concrete, hands shaking. He didn't care about the stains on his clothes or the smell of his own sweat. He only cared that she was here. He fell to his knees in front of her. "Emily, please," he choked. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I have nothing left. No job, no money, no one. I was wrong. I was stupid. Please, help me." Emily looked down at him. There was no hatred in her eyes, no fury, no gloating. Only a deep, heavy kind of sorrow. The kind you feel when you finally accept something has died. She gently removed his hand from the hem of her dress and took one step back. "Mark," she said quietly, "you called me a failure the same week I became the most powerful woman you ever knew." He squeezed his eyes shut. "I know," he whispered. "I know that now. I saw the articles, the news, the hearing. I saw everything. I was wrong. I listened to the wrong people. I believed the worst. Please, I can change. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me like this." Emily's eyes softened, but not with love, with understanding. "You didn't betray me because I was weak," she said. "You betrayed me because you never cared to see who I really was." He shook his head, desperate. "But I see you now," he said. "I know what you built. I know what you own. I know how smart you are. I know I was small. I know I was—" She raised her hand slightly, stopping him. "You know everything that hurts you," she said, "and almost nothing that ever mattered about me." His mouth closed. She was right. He had memorized her failures, but never her sacrifices. She took another slow breath. "You didn't just walk away from our marriage," she said. "You walked away from the woman who would have given you the world." He pressed his hands together, begging. "I can't live like this," he sobbed. "I can't be out here. I don't have anything left." Emily's expression changed, no longer soft, but honest. "You didn't lose everything, Mark," she said. "You threw it away." The words weren't shouted. They were simple, true, final. For a moment, the gas station lights hummed above them, and the air felt strangely still. Then Emily turned. She walked toward the entrance of the charity gala in the adjoining building, heels clicking with a calm, steady rhythm. Mark tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He stumbled and dropped back to the ground. As Emily reached the glass doors, they opened from the inside. Standing there, holding a thin folder and a printed resume, was Vanessa Hale. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun. Her makeup looked like it had been touched up too many times in one night. Her eyes were red at the edges. She had come dressed formally, like everyone else arriving to network, to beg for a fresh start, to look for work. She froze when she saw Emily. Emily's gaze met hers, quiet, steady, knowing. Vanessa's shoulders dropped. She lowered her eyes, unable to hold the stare. In that one silent moment, everything was clear. Vanessa had lost the company, lost the protection she thought Mark gave her, lost the credibility she used to build her entire career. Now she stood in the doorway, resume in hand, hoping someone inside might still be willing to trust her. Emily stepped past her without a word. No revenge speech, no insults, no satisfaction. Just a simple, undeniable fact. They had both taught Mark how to treat them. Emily had learned. Vanessa still was. Inside, the warm lights of the gala reflected on polished floors. Soft music played. Voices murmured. Photographers moved through the room, glancing down at their shot lists. Emily walked into that world, the one she built with her mind, her discipline, her quiet strength. The doors began to close behind her. Outside, Mark lay on the concrete, suit dirty, hands shaking. Vanessa stood alone in the doorway, clutching her resume like a lifeline. The glass doors shut completely with a soft, final sound. A chapter closing, a life finished. Emily didn't look back. I hope you felt every moment of this story as deeply as I did while shaping it. If it moved you, don't forget to like, share, and drop the lesson you're taking away from Emily's journey in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. See you in the next video.